Welcome to Restore the Glory podcast. My name is Jake Kim.
And I'm Bob Schutz.
We're two Catholic therapists sharing what we've learned personally and professionally to help you on the journey of restoration.
If you've been blessed by our podcast, please prayerfully consider partnering with us on Patreon. Your support will help cover the cost to produce the podcast, but will also give you access to exclusive content like monthly reflections and special live stream teachings. Go to patreon.com/restoretheglory and join the mission of experiencing the restoration of our God-given glory.
Hey, Bob. Good to see you once again. How are you doing today?
Hey, Jake. I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. I am looking forward to a guest that we have with us. I want to read Isaac's bio just to give people a sense of who he is and where he is, and then I can share a little bit about how I got to know him personally. So our guest today is Isaac Wicker. He is the co-founder of the Known program. He's a therapist, licensed professional counselor, started mental health work in 2014. He served as a supervisor in low-income mental health programs for several years while he was obtaining his master's degree. He's been practicing therapist ever since. He created the Whole Human Challenge program to help Catholics uproot anxiety and enliven their faith. And he's also personally struggled with mental health. So his work with people, he gets it, and it's important to him in that regard. And his practice is imbued with true sincerity and heartfelt empathy. So Isaac, you and I got to know each other from a mutual friend, Daniel.
Yes, he says hi.
That is awesome. So Daniel has come on our therapist retreat before. And then I did an event with Daniel, and then Daniel said, I think to both of us, you guys need to talk because you guys would like each other. And then we had the privilege of hanging out and talking, and it was awesome. And then I learned more about all that you do and was like, wow, you'd be awesome to have on Restore the Glory. So I'm really excited to have you. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit more about that's like the most dangerous question to ask a therapist. Tell me about how you became a therapist, because we're all like, let's go back to the beginning and take that wherever that you'd like to go. But like your journey into the mental health field and doing therapy. And then after that, I'd love to hear about how God became a part of that and all that kind of stuff. So wherever you want to take it.
Okay, big question.
Yeah.
So actually, I think growing up, my vision of a therapist was just like somebody who sat back and asked, how do you feel about that? And so it was kind of a joke. And I never thought that would be where I would end up because it seemed so distant from the person who's actually suffering, who actually matters. But then when I was in college, I was facing my own mental health stuff more, but then I also had several friends really suffering. One in particular who was just chronically suicidal and actually was hospitalized at some point in our schooling together and ended up having to drop out. But I just remember like the simplicity of going to spend time with her. It was just like I would walk in and I'd just start talking about the art on the wall. I'd just start talking about whatever video game she might be playing or whatever plushie was on her on the couch or something. And it was just like that simplicity, I would notice a huge change in just the way that she was. Like she would calm down and she would like refocus her eyes and she could like be with me, and then we'd be laughing and we'd be engaged with each other. And so it was several moments like that with that friend and other friends where I said, I want to do this. I want to be this kind of person for somebody where it's like there's the darkness, but they don't have to be alone. I'm not answering any questions. I'm not solving any problems. I'm not diagnosing anything. I'm being a human with you in a simple way where life isn't terrible, where it's just like we can really re-engage and be interested in life together. And that can change everything. So I still wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do. And so after I finished with my bachelor's degree in Minnesota, here we have a program. It's called Adult Rehabilitative Mental Health Services. And so it's an in-home service for mental health skills that works exclusively with low income adults with more severe mental health issues. So I did that, basically had no training. Within a week after starting the job, I'm on my own, just walking up to people's houses, being like, hey, I don't know you, and I don't know anything about this field. Let's start doing stuff. So like basically no training, just thrown in with the people who have everything as the problem.
Yeah.
Like the money's the problem, the relationships, the drugs, the mental health stuff, the disconnection from their family, like the turmoil within their friends. So like working with homeless people, working with people who are getting off an addiction or maybe have a secret addiction in the background.
Wow.
People who just got out of the hospital with a manic episode that so they're just discovering they have bipolar. And I loved it. After I stopped drowning, like it took me about 6 months where I was just drowning, where I felt like a fool because all of my clients knew more about the mental health field than I did. But after I was like, even in that period, I was like, I love this. I don't feel like I'm doing it very well, but I love this. And then within a year, when I really felt like I had my feet under me, I started to get creative. I was like, actually, all the things that I've been doing don't work. And most of the things that people have been doing with these people don't work. Like they're stuck. They're so stuck. So I started developing my own exercises and my own techniques and my own theories. Just kind of in my backpack, I'd have a session with a client where we'd be talking things through, and I'd just be like, why doesn't that work? And we'd talk through it and really get to the bottom of it. And then I'd go home and write some theories down in my notebook and then try it again the next day and start like really workshopping things with my clients.
Wow.
So I developed this collaborative relationship of just like, what you've been doing doesn't work. I don't think people know how to work with you. Let's figure something out. And so I just felt like I could be creative in a way where I was drawing my clients into the creative process. Just like, hey, you know about your brain. You've experienced your own life. Like, let's try stuff. And seeing people really come alive. And I mean, I have tons more to say about that, and I could just keep going and going and going, but I'll give you a space to ask questions if you want.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I love the heart you have behind that, and just both with your friend and then with the low income group that you're working with, just engaging them in a place of their heart and like bringing them out of wherever the disconnection was into that. And give us kind of a flavor for one of those situations, like one of those situations where this isn't working and how you engaging them brought that creativity up.
Yeah. I was working with one guy. He had a traumatic brain injury, and he was also an alcoholic and had diabetes. So it's just like a tough situation.
Wow.
He's probably in his late 50s. And I got this client from somebody else who was leaving. And as we're doing our exchange meeting, he tells me privately, this guy like really can't work on anything. He just needs somebody to keep him company. And I like nodded my head and then went in and immediately started working on things with this guy. Because I was like, no, I'm not going to I'm not going to settle. And one of my early ideas with him was to just, okay, you've got memory problems. Let's start playing the game memory. So I took a regular deck of cards and we started playing memory. And then I said, wait, why don't we just add values to these cards? So it'd be like courage and hope and friendship and patience. And I just filled up this entire deck of cards with these values that would have matches. And then at the beginning of every session, I'd have him pick the 10 values that mattered most to him that day. And we'd play memory, and I would teach him some memory tricks and stuff. And then afterwards, we would create a values map where I say, okay, which value is most essential for you today? And he would say courage. I say, okay, tell me about what courage means to you.
Hmm.
Why does that matter so much to you today? How are you using that? How do you want to use that? And then we'd pick another value. What value connects with courage? Oh, patience. How do patience and courage connect? And
Hmm.
he'd have to tell me, he'd have to give me all the answers to these questions. And so then he'd have to tell me about patience, what patience meant to him, how he used patience. So each week, we would develop this map of his week that was based on the values that he lived or that he wanted to live.
Hmm.
And then we started doing it facing problems. So he'd have an argument with his girlfriend, and I'd say, okay, what values were at play here? And he'd say, okay, forgiveness and connection were at play. And we'd have to talk through that situation using a values framework.
Hmm.
Because I'd come into the situation, he'd just be cussing out his girlfriend, telling her, saying like all these bad things about her. And I said, no, that's actually not how you want to live. Like, let's look at what got hurt, what values got hurt, and what values you're going to use to fix the situation. And by the end of our work together, we did this every day, or not every day, every week for a year. We'd do a values map.
Wow.
And by the end, he would tell me about a struggle he's having and tell me the top 10 values that, like, he'd tell me his thinking process incorporated the values already within them. And so he's seeing his life from this lens of like, okay, that hurt because it felt like there was a betrayal of connection. And I know that I need to forgive her, but that's going to take courage and patience. And okay, that's how I need to face the situation. And this is somebody who, everybody else had given up on. And they just said, oh, he just needs somebody nice to listen to him. Whereas like we got down to work and we were like totally changing his whole processing of life.
Wow.
Like, oh, this is what's actually happening within me. And this is why I'm so angry about it. And this is what I want to do about it. And I have courage. I have strength within me to do something. That's one example.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any follow up there, Bob?
No, that's really neat. I really like first of all, your heart for each of the people, and then just the creativity and imagination.
It's that, Isaac, what this is similar to the conversation that we've had before. And I think something that impresses me so much about you is some people, this is my perspective, some people, it seems, learn how to do therapy and they go to school and they like put on the suit of like, and now I'm a therapist. And then there's to me people who God made therapists from the moment that he had the idea of him. And you strike me as the latter, where you're in a situation where it looks like failure, right? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm drowning. Most people in drowning situations, they tap out. They go, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I think I know where you'll go with this, but I'm going to state a controversial, it's not really controversial, but it's more of I think to mental health professionals, this is a controversial statement. Can we say that all good therapy is essentially loving people well? What is your take there?
I think so. I think with the qualifier good therapy, yes.
Okay.
Because you have to have so much attention to somebody. You have to have so much attention to somebody that you're able to like move with them, adapt to them, see, like to really see somebody, you do start to love. Like they're so connected. Like loving somebody makes you want to see them more, and seeing them more makes you love them more. And so I think at like the heart of good therapy is like this fascination and delight in people. And sometimes it's like a dogged fascination where you're just like, I actually don't see anything beautiful about you at first, but I want to find it because I know it's there. And so you have to hunt, you have to look, and then you draw it out. You draw out what's beautiful. You draw out what's good, and you foster it, and you let it have life, and you let it flourish, and then you send it off. You send it off into the world. And so being that close to somebody and seeing so much good and and being able to delight in it, like that is love. That's connected to love. And so I would say, yeah, at the heart, all good therapy is loving somebody well.
Are you high on creativity in your strengths tests?
I'm assuming so.
Yeah, I hear that. I just hear your mind is so fertile in that way of just drawing on whatever's going on and then just being creative in the response.
Yeah, and I would tell my clients this all the time of just like I'm coming in with all my ideas, and I'm totally willing to throw them out to receive you.
Yeah.
And this is how, like, I've developed theory over time. Is I would have an idea, and then as soon as I had a client who didn't match that idea, I'd throw out my idea and start building in that new client's experience of like, actually something new is going on here. And this is fascinating. I want to understand it with you. I want to grow with you. I don't want to get stuck on my idea, because my idea by itself will just suffocate you. But my idea is only here to inform my ability to be with you better. And once it stops doing that, I throw out my idea and I'm here with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's great. That's creativity too. Just that adaptive movement with what's going on. And just I hear your knowing is loving and loving is wanting to know, and, just being able to see the beauty in the other person. And I think about this morning at Mass, it was the Lord delights in his people. And that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing you're growing in delight for the person in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where does your faith come in to your practice and to your work with people? How do you integrate that? How do you pull it all together?
I don't need to integrate it. It's everything in me is connected to my faith. Like there's no like process of integration, because it's already me. Like what Bob was just saying, like the Lord delights in me, and like his love forms me and shapes me, and it guides everything I am and want to be. And so there's no finicking. There's no trying to like piece it together, because I walk into a room and my faith is informing me. Like it's who I am. And so I actually had to wrestle with this question quite a bit at the beginning of my work. I'm just like, I know these people need Jesus, and I can't talk about Jesus. I've worked in exclusively secular settings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the Lord started to reveal to me just love, like be fascinated by people. The way that I think about a person, the way that I talk, the way that I love, the way that I connect, all of that is derived from my faith. And I don't need to be the one that converts anybody. I need to be the one that loves somebody. And I don't need to say anything special to love somebody. I don't need to have an agenda. And so I've had many, many people who are anti-Catholic who will openly talk about how anti-Catholic they are, assuming I believe the same thing that they do.
Sure.
And they love me. They love my approach. They've never heard anybody talk about people this way. They've never felt loved this way. And I know where that comes from. Even so, like my theories are based on Catholic anthropology. And you go into a secular setting and you start talking about Catholic anthropology, you're just going to get a lot of people up in arms. But when you start actually treating people from Catholic anthropology, they love it. They crave it. They're so hungry for it. I've worked with many people who have said, I've been in therapy for 20 years, and only now am I understanding myself because of what you're saying. Only now am I actually moving. Only now do I have hope. Only now do I see my own goodness. One person said, you're the first person to tell me that the way that I am is good. So like that's all connected to my faith. And like there's many deeper levels too of just like, for example, hope. Walking into such dark situations, you either need to pretend it's not that bad and just like have a positive attitude, or you need a real rock to find your hope on. Like a real, because like when I'll go into a situation, I don't see the light. only because I know God do I know that there's light. And so then I fight to find it. And so I'd say that's where my faith comes in.
That's good.
Wow. Well, transition all that into the known program. And I can see that, I can hear the connections already in the origins of that.
Yeah. So
can I interrupt? Can I be rude and interrupt?
Yeah.
I want to, Isaac, I want to see if you're willing to bring us more into you, the man. I want to hear about your inner world and what that is like, because let me set it up a bit with some commentary. Bob and I obviously care a lot about psychotherapy and healing, and particularly the integration of the two. And what I love about what you're bringing is you're not thinking about integration. And that's what your answer just showed. A lot of people are. A lot of people struggle. They don't know how to they don't know how to operate with the ease that you're describing in whatever. So even if it's a Christian setting, they're still struggling to operate with that level of comfort and ease, particularly in a psychotherapeutic setting, because they're like, I'm not allowed to bring my faith in. And I'm hearing you just free flow with that and going, oh, it's not an issue because I'm being myself, And so what I'm realizing is, the things that maybe have always been easy for you, and that's what I don't know, have always been easy for you, aren't easy for other people. And I'd love to hear more about that dynamic internally for you. And maybe this is going to lead us right to the known program, and what you do and have done there. But Bob, when we talk about security, maturity, purity, what I feel like, so Isaac, I'm going to talk about you too, Bob, for a second, just to set something up, but there you are listening to it. Isaac strikes me as somebody who's very secure. I'm experiencing, and I don't know if that's the case, and that he's describing to me what the fruit of security looks like in all of these various settings. Like, I'm settled in who I am, I'm settled in who God is, and I'm settled in God and myself when I walk into a situation that has a lot of unknowns where anxiety or whatever might be provoked. But was that always the case? That's Isaac, where I'm like, were you always like this? There's mental health struggles in your personal background. So I'm very curious about you, the man. I don't know where you want to take that, or if you're like, I plead the fifth and you want to get out of here. But
I guess I'm not totally sure how to answer the question. My older sister, so I'll start as a kid, actually. My oldest sister, I actually don't remember this well, but she tells me that I would sometimes just come into her room at night and be really sad and upset. And she'd ask me about it, and I'd just say, like, I'm sad because I know that there's so many kids starving in Africa. Then she would just like set up a sleeping bag on her floor and a pillow, and she'd just talk to me, and then I'd go to sleep. So ever since I was really young, I've had like a deep emotional life where things impact me a lot. And I remember also I struggled with friendships in early school. And my struggle wasn't actually to fit in. Like, I fit in pretty well. I made friends pretty easily. But my struggle was like, there's no depth here. I've got all of this stuff going on inside of me. I have all these big questions. I have all these big emotions, and we're talking about whatever. We're talking about like kickball. Right. And then I saw, I'm like, as soon as the school year ends and we get a different class or assignment, like, I'm going to have different people because I sit with different people at lunch. So there was like this sense of like, there's no roots. So by the time I was 12, I was just full of big questions, and nobody was talking about them. And then I went to a high school youth group that my parents were leading so that we're a part of Communion Liberation, a movement within the Catholic Church. So they were leading a high school youth group for that. And I went and just felt like fresh water. I was like, people are asking questions that I have. People are asking about the meaning of life, the purpose of things, like why, like how to live fully alive. And so I was just like glued to that since I was 12 years old. Just like we were reading Father Giussani, which is a fairly complex read.
As a
And
12-year-old.
I was reading it every day, taking notes. And within that method, there's like this challenge to ask big questions and to look for big answers. And to say like I remember in school really being like, okay, where can I find Jesus while studying my homework? Where can I find this source of life while I'm riding the bus? Where can I find this life in friendships? It became like a big question really fast. Like I probably by the time I was 13, I had a very clear awareness that like this is what mattered in my life. Like this is like answering these questions and being able to stay close to the source of these answers was what mattered in my life. And so all of the circumstances became an opportunity to wrestle with God, to wrestle with big questions, to have big questions and big desires, and to not be afraid of that. So in high school, I remember being actually particularly drawn to atheists because they had really big questions like me. It seemed like so many Christians that I met had made their questions really small and like just they didn't want to talk about big grandiose things. They just wanted to believe in Jesus, which seemed totally separate from the Jesus I knew, which was like a dynamic, like wrestling match with God. So like everything was a place to wrestle. And that carried me through. And in college, like started intersecting with different mental health things where I just like get far out into existential crises and then crash. But like it was the same core that's always been there for me. Just like I need to know why this matters, and I need to know why there's hope, and I need to know what the purpose is. I need to know. And so even little things like I can have a bad day with my kids and it's a big question attached to that of just like, okay, what does it mean to love my kids? What does it mean to be forgiven? What does it mean that they're taken care of by God and that like it's not just all on me to make sure that they have a good life? Who's the one guiding all this and what's it all for? And why exactly this day? And how does this day fit into the precise plan that God has for us? So I've always been on the edge of those big questions. So I think that's what drives me, and that's where I try to rally people back to. Just like, actually, your life matters. The reason you're in this circumstance, there's something that matters here. There's something you need to do. There's something you're called to. There's a way for you. There's a purpose for you. Let's go. Like there's no time to just sit idly by. Like we need to be up and moving because life matters. Life is urgent. Does that answer your question? Or
it's awesome. What it's giving is what I love is it's a glimpse into your inner world, which is super. I mean, it's just interesting to hear people's stories, but I think something that you're doing for our audience is you're offering if you take a diamond and you turn it a little bit, you get a different vantage point, or you look at a landscape and you move 100 yards to one way, it looks different. And so as we look at the landscape of therapy and healing and the restoration of the glory God has given us, what I love about what you're doing is it feels like we're moving a little bit and looking at it in a different angle, which I think is really fresh, and I'm really appreciating it. And so I think the value of it is like, how do you tick, and why do you do what you do? And I think it's really cool. I think one of my interesting cautions will be, but Bob, I'm kind of stepping on Bob's toes here. So Bob, I'm going to hand it over to you in a second. Is I think the temptation for people who struggle in these domains, which I think as I observe you, there's been a great gift in your life. There's been a particular grace in your life to wrestle with the big things, but at the same time not be swallowed by them. Because I think some people wrestle and they're drowned. And then they feel hopeless and despair, maybe because they're not tethered to anything, or they don't have to use an attachment principle, they don't have a secure base from which to ask the big questions, and they get flooded. But I'm hearing implicitly that you were secure enough, whether that was in your family of origin or in your extended family or in God himself, maybe a combination of all, that you could explore these domains and not be swallowed by them. But I think the temptation is when you don't have that, I could imagine myself, potentially even currently, particularly in years past, listening to what you're saying right now and almost believing that I need to do what Isaac is doing if I'm going to figure myself out. And I think what's interesting is I don't think even you would agree with that.
No.
Yeah. I think you would have a big caution. And so what I'm trying to do is get to the essence of maybe what the Spirit is doing and maybe what people are hearing. And if they're being inspired, for them to go, what has happened? In essence, learn from what you're doing and do the same thing in themselves. Don't just play copycat, which I think is what a lot of people do. And I'm hearing, maybe as I'm talking myself through it, I'm an external processor. Podcasting is good for me. Is that you kind of were in that zone the whole time, and all your therapy was I want to discover you with you, client. And in the process, I'm going to discover me with me. But one of the things that Bob and I talk about is the only way that you can heal humans is to see them in their wholeness, not from their deficit. Like you can't start from the fall to then begin the storyline of working with humankind. You have to start with pre-fall. And that's an anthropological statement. And I'm hearing you do that almost implicitly. It's like you can't help but do that.
Yeah. So I think one thing that's really important in everything that I do and live is I tell people, make it as relational as possible, as quickly as possible, like particularly in relationship with God. So if I'm angry, be angry at God. If I'm sad, be sad with God. To be relational with God as quickly as possible. If I'm confused, I want to be telling God how confused I am. If I'm stuck, I want to be telling him how stuck I am. If I don't trust him, I want to be telling him how little I trust him. And so this actually gets into the Gnome program quite a bit, but this method where being as relational, like all of me is meant to relate. And so I'm relating to God. If I just feel really sad about how one of my kids is doing, I want to be telling God exactly how sad I am. And all of that. And then he's relational back. Like he meets me in all of those places. And over time I've learned to hear his voice a lot better. Another practice is that I pray the surrender novena. I've been praying it basically every day for like 2 years. And that's so much a part of it is like, okay, I'm giving this to you, God. I'm giving you my anxiety right now. I'm going to give that to you, and I want you to take care of it. My task in life isn't to fix myself. My task is actually to relate to God. And so my anxiety, if my anxiety becomes relational with God, it's actually fulfilling my primary task in life, which is to relate to God. And so my anxiety becomes a means, an avenue, a vehicle for fulfilling what I'm meant to do, which is relate to God. But if my goal, if like I'm trying to fix myself, I keep my anxiety really close. I try to fix it, and then my anxiety becomes a barrier to my primary task, which is relating to God. And so the anxiety can be either the avenue or the barrier. But it's like this. It's am I willing to be relational there, or do I need to keep it close because of shame or because of fear? So I'd say that's the turning point.
Yeah. Wow. I got a lot of different thoughts there. Is there a point, before we get to the known, is there a point in your life where you were doing the first, which was keeping it close and living in the anxiety and feeling the consequences of that? And then how did you discover to come out of that?
Yeah. So I'd say in college is where I wrestled with it the most. I have a few stories with that, but one, I was actually leading a small group in college. And for a while, there was an intense amount of anxiety for me leading that small group. And my anxiety came from these people, and it was an interesting group. It was half Catholic, half atheist. So I felt a lot of pressure in that time to convert these atheists, or at least to like make a convincing argument for Christ. But the anxiety came out of the fact that I knew these people needed Jesus. I knew these people needed God, but I actually didn't trust God to show up. And so I felt like I needed to be the God substitute as the small group leader. And it was just an intense amount of, I'd like almost panic before leading it, because I knew so clearly that they needed more than me, but I didn't trust that more than me would show up. And so I just needed to pretend that I was more than me.
Wow.
Whereas I then went through a mental breakdown, and that made things a lot easier because I was just in a position where I needed Jesus. And so I was showing up just needy. And that was the most beautiful year of our small group.
Wow.
It was the last year, and it was the most beautiful year because I showed up needy, and I needed Jesus, and they needed Jesus. And so we were all just going, betting Jesus was going to show up, or hoping at least. And that breakdown actually helped me so much to just need Jesus instead of trying to be Jesus. And there are a lot of times like that where I've felt like I had to be somebody, and every time I think I have to be somebody, it's a lot harder than when I just need God.
Wow. Yeah, it's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, I said when I watched the introductory video of the Known program, just what you're describing right now is communicated everywhere. You start with people asking the hard questions, inviting people to ask the hard questions. And then as they're sharing testimonies, and I recommend people go and look at this, but as they're sharing testimonies, every one of them is talking about the deeper security that they've come to with the freedom to ask those questions and the discovering the Father in them.
Yeah.
Isaac, bring us into it. What is the Known program? How did it come to be? I think it's fantastic. And so I want you to share as much as you'd like about it, because I want it to bless people.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to share about it. I guess how it came about is I met Dr. Matt Bruninger at a conference, and we just hit it off. It was his idea. He said, I want to do something about healing attachment with God the Father. And the idea was that people are trying to do stuff with their life, but they're doing it out of this anxiety, like trying to prove themselves, trying to be worthy of love, rather than out of a place of being loved. So starting from anxiety rather than security. And so to know what God wants you to do, you start from the place of actually like being loved by him, being secure in his love. And so then we connected and we built this program. It probably took us about a year of just like almost weekly calls where we're workshopping different exercises and doing them ourselves and feeling how it feels, and like really trying to process through what would those steps be. And so what we came to is just the basic structure. It's a 12-week program online where we meet once a week and do like these live sessions where it's mostly just coming and saying what happened this week, what happened. And then we send you off with, so there's a workbook. It's pretty beautiful. I mean, I know that
is nice.
You can find it on Amazon. And if you just search Known, Embraced by the Heart of the Father. And each week has a set of exercises, and they each connect. And so we ask people to take three silent evenings each week where you turn off technology from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then at 9 p.m., you turn off all electric lights. And so the idea is quieting the noise that the world brings, and then being able to be with yourself. And at first, this is very scary because we are experts at avoiding ourselves, because ourselves are where we find all the big, scary questions and all the wounds and all the pain and all the doubt and skepticism and fear. And so being able to actually turn off and silence is a scary process. But that's also where you start a genuine prayer life. That's also where you start a genuine relationship with God. So instead of running to all of these other things to comfort you, to help you escape from the pain inside, you're You're saying, do I go to God? Can I trust you with this? And we start the program with honesty. So our mantra for people is to show up and be honest. Show up and be honest. We say this isn't a self-help program. We're not giving you tools to fix yourself. We aren't trying to fix you. We're trying to open up a new avenue for God the Father to come and have a relationship with you. And in that relationship, you will find the healing that you seek. So the first week, the questions are, in my relationship with God the Father, I feel, and in my relationship with God the Father, he seems. And we just have a big list of questions. So I feel abandoned and scared and angry, and he seems distant and judgmental and uncaring. So we start with that level of honesty. And many of the people, we've had probably a dozen religious sisters go through the program. We've had many people who are spiritual directors, where I think in the church, we don't often have the space for that level of honesty. Or maybe we're afraid to just admit that. It's like, I actually feel abandoned by God. I've been faithful to him. I go to church. I do my practice with God, but I don't trust him. I wouldn't actually give him my true desires or my true wounds. So we keep him distant. And then to just even admit, I'm angry. I'm angry and I feel abandoned and you seem judgmental. And that's what I believe about you. And then the next week, we pick the two strongest words and we let that part of you that feels that way just rant at God. So if anger could just say whatever it wanted at God without any of the other parts of you getting in the way, without your good theological foundation getting in the way, like what would your anger say? If it had the permission to swear, if it had the permission to yell and call names and say like in honesty what it wanted to say, what would it say? And so then we progress. Like I could go through each of the weeks, but we focus primarily on wounds and desire throughout the program. So we go back and forth between wounds and desire because those are the two most vulnerable parts of ourselves. It's like to give God our wounds, like where we feel like we've been betrayed and hurt, and then to give God our desire, what we actually hope for, what we want. And so, yeah.
Can I just interject for a second? So the questions are in a workbook that they do in between sessions.
Yep.
How many people are there, and what do you do in the middle of the sessions?
Yeah. So the sessions, I guess a bigger part, we have it so that the program can get as big as it wants, basically. This last one, we had 100 people go through it.
Wow.
And then there's optional small groups. So you can be in a group of like 5 people where you're actually journeying in a more intimate way. And then when we come together in a live session, it's actually beautiful because both Matt and I have this just setting out. Just it's so clear that we're just betting it all on God the Father. And so we never need to perform. So we come up to the live sessions and we start out with a mind dump, which is just writing everything that's on your mind right now on a piece of paper. And that's just like to clear out space. And then we set that paper aside. We have everybody write down 10 beautiful moments from their week. And then we talk a lot about how when we're in like a fear-based or trauma-based response, like we zero in on what is ugly in life. We zero in on what is scary. And to even just notice that beautiful things happened to you this week, that's a big deal for people. Wait, that was beautiful. And I can acknowledge that and I can savor that without trying to undermine the fact that things are hard. You can say that things are beautiful too. And then we share those beautiful moments together. And then we get into just processing what happened. So what came up for you this week? And that's where we go to like the big questions. Where are you feeling stuck? Where are you feeling frustrated? Where are you feeling gracious? And this over and over again, telling people to show up and be honest. Like, I actually didn't feel anything from God, and I'm so disappointed about that. And I actually don't know if I want to keep going with this program. That's a totally legitimate thing to say. And then we are together.
How are 100 people communicating that?
Yeah. So we're on Zoom sessions, and then we do breakout rooms.
Okay.
So we have a main room together, and that's where Matt and I will talk about stuff and reflect on things. And then we send people out into breakout rooms where they're with their small group and a few other small groups, and they're interacting and engaging. And then we all come back together.
That's great. Yeah.
So it's a flow of like kicking people out into breakout rooms where there actually is some sense for intimacy, and you're in the same breakout rooms all 12 weeks. So you can really get to know people. And if you're getting to know people at this like vulnerable, honest level, like that changes things. And then you're coming back together and seeing that you're part of something bigger. And so then that's the flow is this small sense of intimacy and connection connected with a bigger movement that you're a part of.
What would happen, Isaac, if somebody just went, "Oh, cool! I love the book. I'm just going to do it on my own"? Would they miss something? Would they be okay? Or
yeah, so that is possible. That's what my mom did, and she got a lot out of it. So the book itself like carries a lot of the program within it.
Okay,
but most people, when you're facing something that's hard, you need like a concrete schedule. You need routines. You need people who are checking in with you. You need people who are engaged with you. Like there's a lot of healthy healing practices people could do on their own, and they don't. But if you sign up, if you pay some money, if you have people that are checking in with you and keeping you accountable, you're more able to do what needs to happen. So I've had people in our feedback form just say like, I only finished this program because I paid money for it, but I'm like eternally grateful that I finished this program.
Oh,
like
right.
there are points where it's hard. Like we're facing really hard things.
Right.
And you need the human element to help you through. So yeah, I think that it's within the workbook, there's a lot that you can get, but you probably won't get it if you're by yourself.
Yeah. It misses something about the whole point of, like you were saying earlier, about being human. We're inherently relational, and bringing things into relationship is important. The reason I ask is there's parts of me that are like, yeah, I think I'll do that by myself, So I'm like, I'm asking on behalf of a friend if that's going to work out or not. Yeah. Isaac, we're getting close to the end of time. Is there anything else about the Known program that you think that you would want us to know or want our listeners to know about? And then I want to make sure we have all the right information to send people to it.
Yeah. So just a practical thing that I want everybody to know about is we have what's called a good steward policy, which is basically if you feel called in your heart to do this program, but finances are an issue, reach out to us. And we work with everybody's situation. It's actually really beautiful to be able to offer this. We probably have 40% of people just do the program for free. Because often people who need healing are in other broken situations as well. So we had somebody come through who's just like, her husband had just died in the last year or two, and she was left with 6 kids. And it's just like, I'm totally happy to give you, I want you to do this. I want you to experience this love of the Father. I want you to experience his care. And so, of course, if you're able, of course, we need people to finance what we're doing. And we're still like trying to grow and make this work and help people know about it. But if you just need this and you don't have anything to offer, come. Like that's been very clear in our hearts of just like, we're not trying to gatekeep the Father's love here. And so that's something I want everybody to know about. And if you will need to tell people about it, tell people about it. Yeah. And then the other part is just like, come wherever you're at. If this, like we've had people who like, this is God's last chance, and they're actually just super angry and they don't believe that he actually cares, and life just hurts. Come that way. Come with whatever skepticism or whatever barriers or whatever you need to come and don't try it. Don't miss out.
That's beautiful. Bob, any kind of final comments before I go through just a list of contact stuff?
Yeah, I just love the confidence that you have that starts it from that place. You know, it's just, you have such total confidence that he's going to show up because you've walked through all of the fear that he won't show up and all of the experiences. And as you're describing the Known program, I just hear the meeting with the girl in college and finding the 10 beautiful things in her life while she's suicidal, and you finding that in your own life while you're going through the breakdown and depending on God. I just hear I was glad we were able to hear the story because you could hear it all manifested in the program.
Yeah.
So listeners, so correct me, Isaac, if any of this is wrong, but the website readytobeknown, all spelled out but one word.com, readytobeknown.com. It looks like the next opportunity to sign up, the next journey begins in January 2025. So you can sign up there, and you can also get to know more about Isaac as well as his partner, Dr. Bruninger, who is actually, we've gotten to know, he teaches at Franciscan University. So it's funny because my daughter is in his class right now. So I think it's just a small world. So we've gotten to know Dr. Bruninger. We met him at a conference, Heather and I, and he's one of those guys who, like, he's one of the coveted professors. So everybody wants to take a class with Dr. Bruninger. And so it's cool because maybe people don't know that, but in that little world, he's like a bit of a superstar and people love him there. So again, readytobeknown.com. There's places to contact them, and you can sign up and do all of that. Is there any other spot, Isaac, that you would want to point people to just to get to know more about you or the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So one more thing on the website is we just finished this, actually. We have a free shame retreat. It's called the Path Out of Shame. Mm-hmm. And we follow Mary's fiat as like a 3-step process for like escaping from shame, for allowing God to start to heal shame within you. So that's right at the top of our website, and that's free. So sometimes it can be a really big leap to sign up for a 12-week program or to start paying money. And so we wanted to give people an option to do something that would start a healing journey right now. So you can just like go on the website, download it right now. And it's amazing. And then we do have an Instagram. It's known.call.sent. You can find us there. And if you want to reach out via email, it's soulandpsych@gmail.com. Just all spelled out, one word.
Cool.
So I'm probably missing something.
You have podcasts also, which is...
Yes, I do have a podcast. Yes, thank you. My podcast is called Whole Human. It's pretty small, so you probably have to search Whole Human with Isaac Wicker. And I put up some of my talks on there, but primarily it's a podcast where I interview people to tell their life story. So starting with the question, what was life like growing up? And then we just go from there. And it's really beautiful to be able to see the arc that God creates in people's lives when there can be so much turmoil. Like when you're in the turmoil in the moment, it just seems like darkness. But when you see the arc from the outside, you see like this masterpiece, and it's really beautiful. I do also have a small YouTube channel called Whole Human Psychology, where I just do little snippets on my thoughts on different psychology topics. So
fantastic.
You also have private practice?
I do not. So I've been really investing in Known. And so I've stepped away from therapy for a bit, actually, to invest more in Known and getting that going. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Isaac, it's an absolute privilege to have you on. Thanks for being with us. And listeners, I really want to encourage you to check this out. I think one of the things, Bob, you and I have talked about is it can be hard at times to know the practical steps, and so to have a system or a journey is super helpful, where you're all walking along together into deeper healing. And I just think these things are fantastic. So Isaac, thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for your faithfulness to it. And I'm really glad our listeners got to see you and hear you.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
Yeah. So again, the website is readytobeknown.com, and we'll put all of the links that Isaac mentioned in the show notes. So listeners, you can check all of that out. And we hope that all of this blesses you, and listeners, we'll talk to you again soon.